So welcome everybody to this webinar. Thank you Formula Botanica for having me. And this webinar is going to be about the microbiome and how it is interacting with our body. My name is Kristin Neumann. I'm the founder of MyMicrobiome, which is an educational platform for the broad public to create awareness about the topic of the microbiome. And besides that, we developed a standard for microbiome-friendly cosmetics, which is the first in the world. So first of all, what is a microbiome? The definition of the human microbiome is technically defined as the complete genome of all microorganisms in and on the body, which consists of bacteria, fungi, and viruses, where bacteria make the major part, 95%. When speaking of the microbiome, we actually usually mean the microbes, but per definition, it is the genome of, so the genes of all those microbes that live on and in us. By numbers, the microbial cells outnumber our own human body cells by a factor of 1.3 to 1. What is actually more interesting and exciting is that the genes of those microorganisms that live on us outnumber our own genes, our human genes, 150 times. So imagine, like in the Human Genome Project, the researchers found out that our own genes are made up of 25,000 genes. And when they found that out, they actually saw that this is actually not enough for our body to work. And so that is how the microbiome, the Human Microbiome Project started, because they saw that they have to look deeper into the matter and look for the missing genes in the microbiome. Something that is also very interesting genetic-wise is that we have between each other 99.9% genetic identity, but 80 to 90% microbial diversity. So that is how you see how complex these microorganisms are that live on and in us. So what is the microbiome actually doing on our body? So it's a strong synergy between us and them. They're interacting and maturating the immune system. They are occupying the body space against pathogenic microbes. So that's kind of, they're really occupying the space, literally. They break down nutrients for us. They synthesize vitamins and others. And they're shaping the body's physiology together with the body. So what is actually influencing the microbiome? How is it drawn? First of all, it's drawn by our genetics. So we cannot run away from that. Our genetics are already forming the landscape where the bacteria, fungi, and viruses thrive. That means that, for example, a specific condition can also be leading to a wrong colonization and thus resulting in a condition like eczema, for example, which is known that it is also drawn by genetics. Starting with that, the lifestyle has a big impact on what is actually then really colonizing our body. It starts already with birth. If the baby comes via cesarean section or naturally, it is already facing different microbes that are forming the fundament for the further colonization. Also, the take-in of medication, but stress, hygiene behavior, and exercise plays a big role on the formation of the microbiome. Diet is a really big topic. So we know actually that a very diverse diet is also resulting in a diverse microbiome. Also, processing of foods play a big role. Then, of course, the environment forms our microbiome, depending on if you're living in a big city with a lot of pollution or on the land side, on the countryside. If you're surrounded by pets, which is actually playing a big role, because they're carrying along a lot of diverse microbiota, but also spending a lot of time in nature plays a big role and enriches the microbiome. So where on our body do we find a microbiome? It's actually everywhere. When we start ingesting, we have the mouth, it's colonized, the pharynx, the respiratory system. It's made up of 600 plus species. The skin is completely covered with over 1,000 species, and it's very dense. The origin-genital tract is lower in density, but also in species number, it's only 60. The stomach is a very harsh environment, and only a few microbes are able to survive in this acidic environment. So it's only 25. And the intestines, which is most familiar to all of us, contains the highest density of microbes from over 1,000 species. So one would have to think of our body as its own whole planet with many different ecosystems, and each ecosystem harbors different microorganisms which thrive in this ecosystem. So just to point out some wordings here, homeostasis is something that you would probably meet quite often. It means that you have a balanced microbiome. Dysbiosis is the opposite. It's a microbiome out of balance. And the microbiome that we actually face in our presence is already very, very destructed by the industrialization, which like as a consequence, we are living indoors, not outdoors anymore. We are having a big proportion of cesarean section, which leads to the meeting of the first microbes, which are rather from the hospital or skin than from the vaginal tract. We are eating a lot of processed foods, easy accessible sugars, and we are living in hygienic, sterile environments, which is also not contributing to a rich microbiome. Plus, on top of that, antibiotics and other medication has been very popular in the last century. We're now facing other problems with that, but it's also a problem for our microbiome that antibiotics systemically destroy our microbiome by the intake. So it's not only working in the area where you have the problem, but in the whole body. Yes, and some diseases that result from a dysbiosis are, for example, inflammatory bowel diseases, and which then might also result in cancers, psychiatric disorders like depression or autism, caries, periodontal diseases. Even preterm birth is correlated with disturbed microbiome, vaginosis, yeast infections. For example, some people know that after intake of antibiotics. But also the skin microbiome, if it's disturbed, we are facing allergies, acne, psoriasis, and eczema as a big issue. So if we go have a closer look at the skin microbiome, I would just point out some facts about the skin. So the skin is the largest organ with around 20 square meters, which seems a lot, but it's also including all like indulgements, pores, sweat glands, hair shafts, which are all colonized, and they're forming different microenvironments. The skin is a physical barrier against the environment, such as UV, toxins, and antioxidants. It has a great variety in pH and temperature, which is also creating different environments for the bacteria and fungi and viruses to thrive. And it's you can think of it as a carpet that is completely covering our body. When you think of numbers again, it's 1 million microbes per square centimeter, which is actually, for me, too much to imagine how much that is, but it's really, you can imagine it's like a second layer on your skin, which is completely covering. And if you wouldn't, like for a certain time, you wouldn't wash off those microbes, it would really form like a patina that's actually protecting your body. But we constantly do that, destroy that. Something that is also very interesting is that the body site diversity is higher than the individual diversity, which means that the microbes found on my face are more similar to the microbes of another person than the microbes on my face are similar to what we can find on my scalp, for example. The establishment of the microbiome is starting already with birth, as I said, and throughout the first years of life, it's forming. So you can imagine a newborn is like a white paper, a blank paper, which is naked, and bacteria start to colonize, and we have the environment has a high impact or influence on how this is being colonized. So I will come to that later. And we are also drawn by genetics, diet, lifestyle, living area, and hygiene. Here's just the picture of how the pH and the temperature vary on our body, which is really interesting. And we have on our skin, we have a core microbiome, which is in the deeper skin layers, and the transient microbiome, which is located on the surface and which can change to what we are facing in our environment. So for example, what we've just been touching. The science is still very young, and it's just as complex as the gut microbiome, might be even more complex. And the gut microbiome is also already being researched a long time, and we still don't know a lot about it. The less we know about the skin, and it's already starting with the way that we are analyzing it. Just some examples here. We have different sampling techniques. For example, we are most of the times taking a swab, which is actually only looking at the transient microbiome. And if we have a patch that is like taking off a little bit of the skin cells as well, that is giving a better picture, but even the best picture you would have if you would take a biopsy, but which is of course hard to do in a clinical study. Then the further we go to the analysis, so we do the sequencing, so that in that way we also find bacteria and fungi that wouldn't grow in the lab. But most of the times 16S RNA is being performed versus whole genome sequencing, where you would find besides bacteria also the fungi and the viruses. And the 16S RNA is also not going down to the strain level, which would be crucial to really identify functional patterns. And the next step is, of course, once you have a sequence that you have out of your sequencing process, you don't actually know what you're looking at. So you need to have a database where you can align this sequence. And if the sequence is not being found in your database, you just won't find it, and it's kind of not there. So the database is really important to have a really good and rich database in order to have the right result. But this is all taken together, the struggles that we face in the science, and which has to be aligned so that results would be actually comparable to each other. Although still we know something about our skin microbiome, so we know that the main genera that live on it, so it's Corynebacteria, Cutibacteria, Staphylococci, and Malassezia, but all in different proportions on the different skin areas. And so what is the microbiome of the skin doing on the skin? So it's occupying the space against pathogenic invaders. As I said before, it's really important. So it's really covering us and not allowing any others to thrive there, which shouldn't be there. It produces antibacterial properties such as bacteriocins, which also keep pathogenic invaders away. But it also stimulates the immune system to produce those bacteriocins. It's also, on top of that, boosting the host immunity if it's seeing some invaders, and it's also interacting with the skin's immune system by, on one hand, educating it to it not being too overreactive against harmless compounds, but it's also stimulating the immune system to mature. Probably most of you have heard about the gut-skin axis. So of course, all our microbiomes are connected to each other, not only gut and skin, but like all organs and their microbiomes. And of course, our gut microbiome influences our skin health and skin's physiology and skin's microbiome. So it's all a very complex interplay. And as mentioned before, genetic predisposition and plus the external factors, the environment, can lead to a dysbiosis, which result in AD, atopic dermatitis, psoriasis, dandruff, dry skin, etc. So what are ways to protect the skin microbiome and to actually develop a healthy microbiome? It's already starting with birth, so the vaginal delivery is outcompeting the cesarean section, because then the lactobacilli from the vaginal tract will start colonizing skin and gut, and then build a fundament and kind of pre-shaping the microbiome, which would then grow on top of it. In the next step, nursing is really important to feed those bacteria and to also get via the human milk. The baby also gets bacteria, so it's full of bacteria. And then this is leading to a further colonization with the right bacteria and the nutrition of the right bacteria. That has also been shown in comparison to formula, infant formula milk. But then, of course, if the kids grow older, it's really important to let them play in the dirt and not to wash them, actually. So kids should not be washed, maybe with water, but not use any detergent, because it's so important that the kids' microbiome develops, and we don't want to strip off their microbiota and their sebum, because the age is really crucial. Like the first 3 years are crucial for the development of the microbiome. Further on, it's really important to have a very varied diet. So the variety of your diet is shaping the variety or the diversity of your microbiota, and also the fresher and more unprocessed the foods are, the better it is. Do exercise, go out and exercise. It's very important for your health and for your microbiome to flourish. If you're like moving your body the best outside in the fresh air, in healthy nature. I chose this picture because I love climbing, actually. And don't overwash, don't over sanitize. Also, don't over sanitize your homes. So that is also something that is destructing your microbial diversity. And watch out for the medication that you're taking. It might not always be necessary, and sometimes you can go another way than using pills. And for antibiotics, it's always crucial to be sure that you really need it in this moment, to take the microbiome in consideration. And last but not least, I would suggest to get a dog, because that has been shown that it's even better than cats, actually. They bring a very high diversity to your home and to your microbiome. So with that, I would like to end and thank you for your patience and your participation here. Next time, I'm going to talk further about the skin microbiome and cosmetics and about our certification. And if you have any questions about microbiome or cosmetics, just drop me an email at info@mymicrobiomefriendly.com. Thank you very much.